He had his last show last Monday. I want to thank him for 40 years of great times. For 4 decades, Tom Petty was a rock star and one of the best musicians of his time. His life, on the other hand, was nothing like the beautiful sounds of his music. Through problems with drugs, relationships, and personal tragedies, they all led to his death. Let us tell you about the sad details of Tom Petty's life, the famous rock star's sad life, and his quick death, which shocked the whole world. The news of his death came right after the end of his 40th anniversary trip. Some people might have thought he was a very chill rock star, but he was actually a true rock star who never gave up, even when life threw him a curveball. An American named Thomas Earl Petty sang, wrote songs, and played guitar. He was the lead singer and leader of the rock bands Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and Mudcrutch. He was also a member of the Traveling Wilburys at one time. During his lifetime, he also tried to make a living by himself. He was born in Gainesville, Florida, on October 20, 1950. His mother, Kitty Petty, and father, Earl Petty, had 2 other boys before Petty. At that time, his mother worked in the local tax office, and his father was a salesman who went from place to place. Bruce, his younger brother, was 7 years younger than him. The neighborhood where Petty grew up in northeast Gainesville is called the Duck Pond by locals. Not long after his sad death, a historical plaque and a park were put in the area and named after him. Petty went to Howard Bishop Middle School and played baseball and basketball there when he was younger. After that, he went to Gainesville High School and finished in 1968. His interest in rock and roll music grew around the age of 10, and that's also when he had the chance to meet Elvis Presley. The meeting with Elvis took place in the summer of 1961. His uncle worked on the set of Elvis Presley's movie Follow That Dream in nearby Ocala, and he asked Petty to watch the movie being made. Almost right away, he became a huge fan of Presley. Years later, when Petty was back from shooting, he talked about how he knew he wanted to be in a band the moment he saw the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show and Elvis at the filming. By the time Petty got home, he had already made a big choice. He would trade his gun for a stack of Elvis records. Petty had an epiphany one day right after a party. He would never amount to anything unless he was in a rock and roll band. That was the time when things were finally going well for Petty and his band Mudcrutch. As he played with the band, he already had a demo and good feedback from a Los Angeles record company. Their hard work was beginning to pay off little by little. Petty's personal life was also changing as things were happening with his band. They were seriously dating, and her name was Jane Beno. Back then, most bands liked to be wild. In a Volkswagen camper van, Petty and his friends drove from Florida to Los Angeles. It was like a big dream come true. The people in his band were all set to do anything. It wasn't long before the police showed up on the trip, despite all the good mood and some defiance. A tall Texas police officer pulled the band over because he was worried about what they were carrying. When the officer asked, they said they had a certain drug, but the officer wasn't sure. Suddenly, things got worse very quickly as the police officer tore the van apart to look for drugs. The band was powerless and freaking out because they thought the officer would find something, but in the end, the officer didn't find anything. The band was able to hide their drugs in a toilet paper roll in one of the members' boots. When the band got to Los Angeles, they met record executives who were excited to hear their songs. At first, they were turned down in a humiliating way, but soon after, 3 record labels became interested in them. This was the start of their journey in the music business. Petty was just beginning to show how lucky and tough he was. This was a trait that would define his legendary career. During his career, Tom Petty sold more than 80 million records around the world. This makes him one of the most popular artists of all time. American Girl, which came out in 1976, and Don't Do Me Like That, which came out in 1979, are just two of his hit songs with the Heartbreakers. You're Gonna Get It, the band's second album and first top 40 record, had the hits I Need to Know and Listen to Her Heart. Their next record, Damn the Torpedoes, sold almost 2 million copies very quickly and went platinum. The hit songs Don't Do Me Like That, Here Comes My Girl, Even the Losers, and the famous Refugee are all on it. Petty and the Heartbreakers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2002. In 2017, he was named Music Cares Person of the Year for his work in music and charity. He was an artist who made songs, but he was also in some movies. From 2004 to the end of the show's run in 2009, he did voice work for Lucky Klein-Schmid on the animation comedy King of the Hill. Tom Petty was a strong person in real life, and he still is years after he died. This singer is back on the Billboard charts with one of his older albums that became a huge hit when it was re-released. His 1980 song Love is a Long Road was used in the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6 in 2003. This made it go viral on Spotify and reached number 2 on the charts. The bands that influenced Petty did a moving cover of a Petty song at the 2004 Country Music Awards and had a song on Snoop Dogg's record that came out in December 2004. Petty said that the Rolling Stones gave him hope by showing that he and other artists could make it in rock and roll. Eager to share the news, his girlfriend Petty couldn't wait to get back to Florida. Meanwhile, his girlfriend Benno was planning a plan of her own. At that time, she had perceived that he was on the verge of fame, so she decided it was time to make her move. After all, they'd been dating for some time. Aside from that, Petty basically lived at her apartment. To her, the next step was for them to get married immediately. Petty was more interested in getting a record deal, and he knew that the time was getting closer than he thought. He wasn't thinking about getting married at all. While he wasn't aware of it, his girlfriend had planned this whole thing with his family. When he got back, all of a sudden there was a wedding. People even wrote down that Petty wasn't as excited as his girlfriend and their families were. In fact, he jumped out of the car and tried to run away. He was very serious, so his mother begged him to do the right thing. He did it, but it was hard for him. He and his bandmates, along with his new wife, went back to Los Angeles to start over and follow their dreams. That's when Petty heard one of the worst news of his life. Right after they got married, his girlfriend told him right away that she was pregnant. This happened on their very first night together. Petty quickly realized that his mother had probably known all along. By the beginning of 1974, Tom Petty had his first daughter, who was born that year. After 1 year, in 1975, his band Mudcrutch began to slowly fall apart. Just after a bad song, this came out. Even though Mudcrutch was over, Tom Petty, being the persistent person that he is, wasn't. One of his former bandmates, Tench from Mudcrutch, decided to form his own group. What kind of sound did Petty like? Eventually, Petty and Campbell worked with Tench, Ron Blair, and Stan Lynch, forming the first lineup of the Heartbreakers. With the formation of a new band, Benno felt like she was left alone to raise their daughter. It wasn't long before their relationship started having its own challenges. While the friction between them continued, the cracks in their relationship began to show, and Benno couldn't help but feel left behind. After pushing for his music fame both in the US and the USK, good things finally came Petty's way. After all his hard work, he was able to buy a Camaro little by little, starting with his first real income check. For Petty, the bad luck wasn't over yet. More trouble was on the way, and it would test his resolve even more. Let's talk about the specifics. People knew Petty as more than just a hit maker. He was a strong, unwavering defender. He was honest and determined to do anything, no matter how hard it was. This was something that his people always admired about him. By the end of 1979, those traits had been put to the test in every way. His newly formed band, the Heartbreakers, had their record deal sold to MCA. One striking aspect of this purchase was the fact that Petty had refused to be tossed around by most of the record executives. Seeing how things were going to unfold, Petty came up with a bold plan. He chose to put everything he had worked for on the line by filing for bankruptcy as a last-minute move to nullify his contract. At that time, the creative and financial control of the band was very important to him. So, during the court case, the other side's lawyers asked him about his money and even his guitars. Petty's courtroom charm helped him with his strategy, and in the end, his opponents chose to settle out of court, which was better for him because he kept his principles. For Petty, this win was all he needed. But disaster was, as usual, waiting around the corner. While he was battling with MCA in court, Tom Petty was also dealing with something highly personal: his mother's health. It wasn't the first time she had faced major challenges. At this time, his father kept pressing Petty to get a nurse who would stay with his mother at home full-time. But with the way he kept insisting on this, Petty and his brother suspected his real purpose was for companionship. Petty's heart was deeply broken to see his mother suffer such indignity alongside her ill health. Tom Petty, as a person, was able to overcome a difficult situation with his father. According to him, his father found it difficult to accept that Petty was just a mild-mannered kid who was interested in the arts, and subjected him to verbal and physical abuse on a regular basis. One time, he described his father as a wild, gambler, drinking guy. He felt like his life was pulling him in a lot of different directions at this point, so he took some time off to visit his dying mother. Bad thing, when he got to her hospital room, he saw that a nurse had magazine pictures of himself all over his mother's bed. He was in so much pain that he talked himself out of going to the funeral for his mother. At this point, Tom Petty's business was going through the roof, but his personal life was going worse every day. One night, when he got home from recording, his wife looked like she had died. She had passed out and was lying on the floor, not moving. Petty called her friend right away to find out what was going on, but her friend said it was just because she had been drinking a lot. Petty knew that this wasn't the first or last time that Beno had had problems with drugs and passed out. Her way of life also made the family afraid that they would split up, but Petty never wanted that to happen. He didn't want to leave his wife just because he was famous, for one thing. His real goal was to keep the family together, just like his mother did. They didn't wait long before having their second daughter, Anna Kim, in 1982. Beno's bad habits and personal demons didn't get any better after they had their child. Beno's mental health problems were getting worse while all of this was going on. Petty was about to lose it as he tried to keep it all together. At this point, it didn't seem like being a rock star made dealing with family problems any easier. During one conversation, Petty's daughter talked about how painful it is to be married to someone who is mentally ill. This made her think of her parents and how mean her mom could be. She then talked about how Beno usually talked badly to Petty. She talked about how heartbreaking it was to see all of that. When Petty woke up one morning to the smell of smoke, he noticed his house was on fire. This was another scary event in his life. He quickly dragged his family outside and yelled for them to jump into the pool to stay safe. Then Petty went back into the fire to get a garden hose, but as the flames raged, the hose melted in his hands. His maid, who was also helping with the fire, caught fire out of the blue and had to use to douse herself. By the time the smoke finally cleared, there was a lot of harm. That wasn't the scariest part, though. The truth about the fire wasn't an accident. Petty and his family were scared and shocked when they found out. Instead, someone had been following the house around, waiting for the right time to attack. Petty later said that he was scared because he knew someone was trying to hurt him and his family at their home in Encino, California. They were able to save some parts of the building, like the recording studio in the basement, and the original tape that was kept there, as well as his Gibson Dove acoustic guitar. But one of the things that was destroyed was his beloved gray top hat. Once things were calm, the police were not able to catch the person who did it. Over the course of his career, Petty also had terrible stage fright that made every show a battle for him. It got so bad that I had terrible stomach aches and even trouble speaking. According to him, part of the problem was the crushing weight of the demands of his fans. In one instance, he even admitted that he would want to be as wonderful as everyone thought he was. So, most times, the struggles and fears of trying to appeal to his audience and keep everyone pleased were some of the greatest causes of his stage fright. As time went by, Petty and Bonneau's relationship got worse, and Petty finally reached his limit. He knew it was a big choice for him to file for divorce. It was said that his solo record Wildflowers, which came out in 1994, was his divorce album, even though it wasn't finalized until 1995. In the end, the breakup was official by 1996. When asked why he was staying, Petty said that it had taken him a long time to get the courage to leave. Well, things were going badly in his marriage at the same time that he met Dana York at a Johnny Cash concert. They started dating after that. Even though Petty was done, Bonneau, his ex-wife, wasn't. There was trouble at Petty's house one night while he and his girlfriend York were there. He drove up to the gate and saw his ex-wife in a limo yelling and pleading with the driver to break it. Petty was still not living his best life when the police showed up. On the other hand, his ex-wife wasn't making things easy. She tried more than once to turn his daughters, Adria, who became a director, and Anakim, an artist, against him. She also called him several times and said she was going to kill herself. Petty, at this point, was terribly depressed and desperate for an escape from all the troubles in his life. Well, to him, he had finally found a way out of it all. With substances, not knowing that it was the beginning of his tragic end. Let's find out what happened. It was very hard for Petty to tell anyone about his new habit. Their album from 1999 was written at a time when Petty was really down, and you could tell in the music, known for being one of his saddest songs, and his behavior matched it. Rick Rubin, the producer, decided to do something about it. He told Petty's family that he was using drugs without telling Petty his family. York was willing to help him fight his problems, which was good. When Petty talked about his emotional pain from his divorce, he said it was a big setback for him and probably the reason he used drugs so much. At this time, York's father had been an addict, so she knew the nightmare of getting clean and how to escape the tragic effects. She chose to stand by Petty through rehab, and he later credited her with saving his life. The change was huge. Everyone in Petty's life kept thanking York for how different and happy Petty was now that he was clean. The wedding took place on June 3, 2001, and was small, with only 20 close family and friends present. At this time, Petty and the whole band were eager and happy, planning for the Heartbreakers' 40th anniversary tour in 2016. Then there was another terrible event right before the tour. Suddenly, Petty slipped and broke his hip while they were practicing. If they were smart, they would have at least put off the tour while he got better, but they didn't. Petty, who never gives up, chose to go on the tour for reasons that were not at all about him. Also, Petty knew that hundreds of people relied on him to make a living, which made his tours even more important to him at the time. York, his wife, tried to tell him to stay home because he was in a lot of pain, but he refused and chose to play through it. He told them over and over that he couldn't do that to his band, his crew, or his fans. To him, it was all about honoring his promise, no matter the cost or what that would take from him. Petty's final tour was nothing short of torture. He pushed himself to do 53 shows even though he was in a lot of pain from both his broken hip and his knee problems. Aside from the physical pain he was going through, Petty was also dealing with depression, anxiety, and severe insomnia. Following the days after the tour, Petty's doctor revealed that tragically his hip had fully broken. The news was a terrible blow. On the same day he got the terrible news about his health, tragedy struck again at 10:45 p.m. when his wife discovered him not moving and told the rescuers that he wasn't breathing. Then she was told to do CPR on him, and when he started breathing again, it looked like it was working for a short time. He was taken to the UCLA Medical Center in Santa Monica, California right away. After he went into full cardiac arrest, he was put on life support. His family had to make the hard choice to take him off of life support because his brain wasn't working. By 8:40 p.m., the rock star died on October 2 at the age of 66, surrounded by family, friends, and coworkers. The famous rock singer's sad journey came to an end. Petty had a funeral service at the Self-Realization Fellowship Lake Shrine in Pacific Palisades, Los Angeles, on October 16, 2017, which was 4 days before his 67th birthday. No one else was there. By January 19, 2018, lunchtime, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner had said that Petty had died from an accidental drug overdose. Because of the overdose, Petty had multiple organ failure from cardiopulmonary arrest that had to be resuscitated. This was due to mixed substance toxicity. Reports said that Petty had taken a mix of several painkillers and antidepressants in very large amounts. He was said to have been in so much pain that it was unbearable, which is what led to him taking too many medications. The day before he died, September 23, 2018, York said that Petty was in a good mood. He did about 3 shows in LAA, and at that point he was so proud of himself, looking forward to the future. There's no doubt that the tragic tale of Tom Petty's life and how he finally passed serves as a reminder of the dangers of substance use and how most rock stars of that era were deeply consumed by it. Aside from that, his habits no doubt took a heavy toll on him, alongside all of the tragedies he had to face. Petty's struggles with substances, the losses and tragedies he faced, and his personal demons were eventually too much for him to bear. Even in the wake of his passing, the legacy of his music and the heartbreaking story of his life continues to inspire fans around the world. If you liked this video, please click the next button and like if you liked the video.